Greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Dale Barzy. As always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey, from students through retirees and anywhere in between. Today, it is my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Susan B. Davis. Dr. Davis is a motivational speaker. She's a nurse. She is known as the Rescue RN. She's a rescue resuscitation education manager. She is an entrepreneur. She's the CEO and founder of CodePRep. So welcome, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Dale. What a pleasure to be here.
It is my pleasure to have you here. Speaking to nurses is what I have learned to love the best. So thank you. Firstly, why are you a nurse?
Such a big question. And I'll tell you what, it grows and changes every single day. I am a nurse. I came to nurse later in life. My goal was to be a veterinarian, and I was in university when I started my family, and then was a mother and stay-home mom. And I ended up having a brief health scare of my own. And while I was working with the physician I was working with, he said, you remind me so much of another gal who's gone through the same situation that you're going through right now. And it inspired her to become a nurse. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. At the time I was stay-home mom. And it kind of planted a little seed in my head. And as time went on, I found myself not too very much long after that conversation, a single mom needing a job. And I had all this education under my belt because I was in vet school. And so I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to march myself right down to the local community college and see what they have to offer. So I walked in the door and I said, what is the hardest science thing you have here today? They said, we have the RN program. I said, I'll take it. And I did not know, and I had not had any, I was never in the hospital. No one in my family had ever been in the hospital. I really did not have I didn't have any nurses in my family. So I just knew that was going to work for me as a single mom. It was going to be a great way to provide for them. It was going to have insurance, and wow, what a schedule, right? Just 3 shifts a week. So that was the start. That was the start. It wasn't a conventional start, but I don't know if many nurses don't always have a conventional start.
No, many nurses don't. But it's interesting to me. I'm laughing because you go and you ask them for the hardest thing they have. Who does that?
How about that? And I thought, perfect, I'll take it. And I did. That was the day I started.
That's interesting. So, okay, so you didn't have an idea that you wanted to be a nurse. It just kind of came about because of your circumstance. And having decided that you're going to do it, then did it turn out to be what you were thinking it might be?
At first, it just opened up I don't know if I knew anything about what it might be, but what it turned out to be was the most amazing experience of my life, and it is still today and growing every single minute, every single day. As a nurse, it grows and changes, but immediately it opened up humanity to me in a way that I was always listen, I used to be so curious if my neighbors next door thought so differently, believed and lived so differently than me, than the people down the block. And then I did a lot of traveling after high school and before college. I traveled all over the world, just loving the human experience and meeting people where they are. But then when I became a nurse, I went right into trauma and emergency medicine, because that's kind of my vibe. But I felt like my time in those walls, it was like a microcosm of the planet. Everything happens inside the walls.
Yeah.
Of an emergency room and in a hospital. The human condition comes alive in a way that is, and it's been an experiment and a pleasure ever since.
Yeah. You talk about everything comes alive behind those hospital walls, and it's absolutely true. There are just hundreds of different stories going on simultaneously behind those walls. But you came at it later. You've done all this traveling. You're a parent. You're a single parent. You had education. You were going to become a vet. You brought a whole lot of human experience and all of that with you. But what challenged you?
I think the challenge for me, again, I started out in trauma and I loved it. I loved the education. I loved the learning. I loved the patients. I loved my colleagues. The challenge for me at the time, of course, my children were 5, 7, and 9 when I started this journey. And as I was working along the years and my kids grew up, it became difficult to be a trauma nurse and a mom. So those 12 shifts, everyone, you know, that I love when we say, oh, it's only 3 12s. You're like, oh gosh, honey. So, you know, those 3 12s, when you have young children and you're single parent, school full-time, work full-time, that's a challenge. And for me, the greatest challenge of being a nurse was I loved being in that trauma ER. But when I walked in those doors, I was a trauma nurse. And I wasn't a mom until I got back out again. And I had that responsibility. So I had to shift. I had to shift away from what I loved so much was the action and the thrill and the challenge of the critical thinking skills and human condition at its worst, you know, and best inside the trauma ER. I had to shift into something that would be more adaptable so that I could be there for my family.
I get that. I absolutely get that. When I at one point I used to work when I first moved to the United States, I worked in a trauma OR. And then I started having children, and I had like 3 children in 4.5 years. And I thought, I cannot maintain this level of adrenaline pumping. So I get that.
Yeah, and then the mom job when you come home doesn't stop.
Right.
The laundry doesn't stop, the groceries and the school projects and that doesn't stop. And I think that's one of the nurses, you know, heavy backpacks we carry in life is we don't want to not wear any of those roles. We want to wear all of those hats. And a lot of us do, which is kind of sort of our demise at times because we don't want to not do any of them. We want to do them. And often we do. And that's where it can be very challenging. So that too, you know, losing you, it's easy to lose you when you become a mom. But being a mom and a nurse, whew,
and the nursing trauma and all of that. And you know, not for nothing, but you know, it is kind of addictive.
Very. Very. I often say, Dale, I was like, you know, just again, just because you can doesn't mean you should or have to.
I know.
And then I always tell them, I promise the seizures will stop. You know, when it's very hard to leave your team. It's hard to leave your routine and to leave your patients, to leave the medicine, but you don't have to leave. That's the beauty. Pivot. That's
it. You just have to pivot. That's one of the things I want nurses to see as I do this channel, because I want to expose nurses to the fact that nurses are doing all kinds of things. And not every nurse is going to be happy exactly where they are, but you can pivot. You can find your niche. There's so many. It's impossible not to be able to find your niche.
No, nursing hacks extraordinaire. Just ask a nurse. If you're unsure about what to do or where to go in your life, just ask a nurse. They'll have a nursing hack, a life hack for you. We are very, very good at workarounds and new flow.
Indeed we are. What would you like to see change, though?
I think what I would like to see changed is this conversation that we're having right now. I think it has to happen. You know, foundations, framework, nursing framework, healthcare framework, it's been there forever. Change is inevitable. I'm all about it. I'm ready for the conversation to change to where are we going versus why are we stuck? And I get it. It's a conversation that has to happen. But I think the best time in the whole wide world to become a nurse is right now. And now is the time where we get to define who we are, what we want, where we want to do it, and whom we want to work with. And if no one's doing it now, we can. I want to see the excitement again about becoming a new nurse and change the conversation from how horrible and hard it is right now in every facet of it. Even though I know that that's all going to hopefully turn out to be wonderfully good things. Not hopefully, it will. But what I like to see change is the conversation too of what's exciting about being a nurse right now.
So, given that that's what you want to see, what would you tell somebody who wants to become a nurse today? More than that, it's exciting, but how would they go about it? What would you tell them?
Well, I'm a firm believer in doing hard things. nursing is not easy. Nursing school is not easy. You know, again, I had young children. I went to school full time. I work full time, and I've not stopped that, Dale. I mean, I kept going. So I would tell them that, again, nothing fabulous and wonderful in life comes from the easy route. So becoming a nurse is very challenging, but there's no end to how challenging it can be and how much you can grow through nursing. The education is endless. The job is endless. And we don't have to come into those traditional, everybody has to do med surg. You can't start in a critical care unit. Forget all that jazz. Find the passion. You know, I think to new nurses, I would say there's a big difference between asked, what do you want? What do you like?
Mhm.
You think, well, you know, I like, but what do you desire?
What do you?
What do you desire? Because what you desire from your life and taking personal leadership around the answer to that question, we are the masters of human connection. We can do anything. We can go into any area. And again, if it doesn't exist, call me and we'll create it.
Indeed, we will. Indeed, we will. Actually, that's what we spend a lot of our life doing, although sometimes we don't even realize it. But we spend a lot of our nursing life creating things and being innovative about things and you know, repurposing things and doing all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, just call us, we'll do it. What would you say? I started to realize, Susan, that I could recognize nurses. I didn't even know what was it about people that made me think the person is a nurse. And so I started asking the question that if you could describe what you see as the most essential quality of a nurse in just one word, what would that word be?
One word, Dale?
All right, I'll take 2 or 3.
Well, first I want to say it's such an intriguing question, and it's funny when you're in different circles or newer circles that you start thinking that person's a nerd. So you're so so now I'm thinking, what is in that inherent quality that's that one word? Being a nurse, it's a way of being. It's a way of being.
Yeah.
We have a curiosity. We have a knowledge and a compassion. I don't want to overuse the word compassion, but I'm going to say a curiosity. I'll go with curiosity. That's kind of a fun word when I think of nurses.
It's interesting that you say that because I have frequently said that you cannot be a nurse if you're not curious.
And I'm leading to myself to say, just recently, I ran across, there was 2 nurses, there were 2 male nurses, and we were in a completely different environment of which I would never have thought 2 male nurses would be. And, you know, it was just a couple words, a little bit of their conversation. So I got curious about, wait a minute, these fellas have enough curiosity. You can tell by their questioning, just by their, I don't know, of course I pick up on their vibe right away, but
yeah.
and it's not just, you know, we're not asking about, you know, whether you need a Band-Aid or, you know, we're not asking about anything about healthcare at all.
At all. Right.
That's the interesting thing.
Yeah. And suddenly you know. So you just mentioned something that I actually wanted to ask you about, because in looking at looking at stuff about you, you wrote something about nursing as a way of being. And I wanted to ask you about that. First of all, what made you write that?
You know, I did a lot of work in this past year as I wear many hats as a nurse. And, you know, I have my entrepreneurial hat and then my, you know, my day job hat, of which I love both. I often think about, and I hear different conversations and I pay attention to what's happening on social media and in the news, and I listen to all aspects of it. But again, similar to our last question, you know, there's replies, regardless of the space I'm reading, that come from nurses that are, it's a way of being. You know, if you do personal leadership work, and I don't think there's a nurse in the world that sometimes we don't use, we use the word leadership a lot, but not when it refers to ourselves, you know. So yeah. Personal leadership to me is that self-awareness work times self-management. And you have to, once you're aware of how you're being, you have to have some action steps to adjust, fix, improve,
Yeah.
maybe leave behind part of that backpack we've been toting for all these years that we don't need to be toting because we just thought we are supposed to, and we didn't realize that all of a sudden we are what we've become based on our experiences and our environment, rather than who we are, which
We are.
you are is your way of being. And nurses, it just have a way of being about us. And I love it that they're all over the world and that they have all different specialties and that we can just pick up on that energy from a nurse. So it's just a way of being. It's someone who has personal leadership and does that work of awareness and management and continuously looking at that. That's personal leadership. So it's a way of being. It's ongoing as well. It's perpetual. It's a perpetual way of being.
Yeah, it is a perpetual way of being. And there's no shedding it. There's no shedding it.
I think that's it. I'll add, when I read those conversations about, I'm just a nurse, that I'm not at the bedside any longer, or you're working with clinical teams versus entrepreneurial teams. And there's that whole, I'm loving this shift into all these nurses becoming entrepreneurs, because you're a nurse. It's a way of being. It doesn't matter. I think I wrote in that piece, it doesn't matter if you're in your jeans in the grocery store. I sense a nurse. And so it doesn't matter who you're talking to, where you go, or what you do. I think that's again, back to what would I tell new nurses? If you're thinking about it, it's a way of being, and you will never not be rewarded. To leave nursing, like they're saying in that first year, they haven't encountered enough of us who will be happy to put our arms around them and let them see themselves as a way of being, why they got there, and help them feel it. Yeah.
It's a way. I see we just I don't want to say like sponges, but we absorb. We never get rid of those assessment skills. Is what you always do. You walk into a room and you have assessed the room. My husband remarks on it. How did you see that already? I have one answer to that. I'm a nurse.
that across the room assessment never ever stops.
He goes, how'd you see that? I'm a nurse, that's all. So we're talking a lot about you mentioned carrying the backpack and all of that. We talk about stuff like that, but a lot of things that we talk about also these days, we're focusing a bit on self-care. And I want to know what it means to you.
Everything. It's everything. It's everything to me. Because we are the 100% absolute worst backpack overloaders, and we wear multiple hats, we often, put our stuff at the bottom of the backpack and don't get there often. To me, it's not optional. It's just, it's not optional. So I can't keep going and doing all the things that I love to do, which is to be a master of human connection, and be ready for that family member or the friend or one of my children's friends or the person in the store that you end up being a nurse with or two, because we just don't stop. But if I'm mind, body, and soul out of balance, then I'm not as good as I could be. And I am a conduit. I'm a conduit from God's lips to my experience with humans. And that energy has to be fostered, and it has to be loved, and it has to be built. If I'm going to keep my vibration and be able to help as many as I can, which is my desire, then I have to do self-care no matter what. So I'm sad when I see nurses not taking care of themselves and wearing all the hats except their own. Yeah, indeed. So I have one more question. You are known, or being known, as the Rescue RN. And your company is your CodePRep. CodePRep. And so I see that you are not only just you're not just preparing nurses or helping them renew their CPR licenses and stuff like that, but you talk about empowering citizens, making citizens BLS, aware and certified and stuff like that. As you go out into the community and educate people regarding being prepared and stuff like that, how are they responding? Oh my gosh, this is one of my most favorite pivots in my life so far. I've worked so hard and concentrated on in-hospital cardiac arrest response and healthcare professionals, nurses, physicians, everybody, respiratory, everybody that's in healthcare. And I started realizing that my message is not just for healthcare, it's for everybody. I mean, cardiac arrest doesn't care where you are. It doesn't care what, in fact, 80% of cardiac arrests happen at home. So what I was like, oh my gosh, this is a big pivot, because they're the people who are coming in and filling our rooms in our hospital. The further upstream I can get with this message, perhaps I can prevent them from coming in the first place. But how are they perceiving it? Dale, it is dreamy. If you just start, you're saying, well, do you know what to do? And then when you show them, they're scared. There isn't a family member that you know that doesn't worry about their family member maybe dropping and not knowing what to do, or the choking baby. I mean, it's a human leveler. Cardiac arrest levels all of us, and an emergency with a family member, a loved one, a friend or family, that levels us all. But to feel powerless until help arrives, that does not feel good for anyone. I don't care where you live, who you are, what country you're in, it doesn't matter your level of anything. It's the same. If you have a heart, you qualify. And when you speak to people like people, they get it. They don't want to be scared. So this is my most fun. This is part about maybe what my way of being right now is, and I'm elevating my energy because I'm now feeding off of everybody.
Yeah.
It was healthcare and patients, and now it's our communities, and we're talking about, EMS, fire, schools, K through 12, law enforcement, businesses, universities are getting on board. And it's so funny because as soon as I have this conversation, literally they light up. So I feel like I've hit on this magic easy button, because everyone feels overwhelmed. Everyone. I don't care if you're in healthcare or what industry you're in. After the pandemic, and my neck of the woods, we had the horrible hurricane afterwards, and we're all a hot mess. But this topic seems to light everybody up, and they don't feel like I'm asking them to do more.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, you ask a nurse to pick up an extra grain of salt, and she's like, "Oh yeah, no, no, I'm max." Yeah. But I found that that's in the community as well. So we're doing hands-only CPR, brief repetitive practice. We've got meat and potatoes, making it very accessible.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. And it's like to help them to have that confidence gives a ripple effect in other things. So it's really cool.
Good. Awesome. Before we go, do you have any last words you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I think, speaking as the rescue RN, and to your last question, I would say we really need to take, all of us, regardless of being a nurse or not, our family members, your personal leadership. Take your personal leadership very, very seriously. Do the self-awareness times self-management piece, because in so doing, we get to recreate nursing. We get to be the new nursing. We get to be the masters of human connection in a time where AI and all this crazy stuff is coming in. We are the answer. We are the answer to the next generation, nursing. So I would add, as a rescue RN, it's not just about, hands on the heart, CPR. Let's rescue one another. If you know a nurse or a new nurse and they're thinking of leaving, let's get them. Send them to me. Send them to me. We need to be mentors.
Me too. Yeah.
Share our energy in any way we can. And we have to embrace the AI world and the connections we can get through social media. Nurses aren't real big on that. I mean, some are, some aren't, depending on where you are in the nursing spectrum. But we need to really come together and for each other. Let's rescue each other. I'm going to be doing a Rescue 2024 tour, and it's going to be combining this conversation like we're talking right now. It's going to be this personal leadership. Let's empower one another for whatever that means to you, as well as, while I'm there, let me go ahead and just teach your whole community how to do some CPR.
That's awesome. And on that note, thank you so very much. I appreciate this conversation. It's been fabulous.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.